Hi knitters, it's Mimi with Pastiche Knitwear, and I'm so excited today to show you the very best way that I have found yet to do a lateral braid. I love lateral braids, but they can be a little tricky to work. I've had so many students that have struggled with them, so I have come up with this alternative, and so I wanted to show it to you today. So to begin, we're going to have a little bit of a setup because we need to make an extra stitch here at the beginning. So I'm going to slip one stitch purlwise, take my left needle tip, come under the horizontal strand that's in between the first two stitches on the right hand needle, just drag it up onto the left hand needle, and then I'm going to replace the slip stitch back on the left hand needle. So what you'll see is the second stitch strands across the front of the first, and that's what it's supposed to look like. Now we're just going to knit these two stitches in succession and then replace the last worked stitch back onto the left hand needle. And that's our setup, and now we're ready to go. Now I'm going to preface this by saying that you're going to need to help your brain overcome a little fear on this one because we're going to have one stitch that dangles. I want to assure you that it's not going to easily fall out, or you're not going to easily lose it, but a lot of times knitters feel nervous about having a stitch that's off the needle, and it'll just be for a millisecond. So let me show you. Let's go ahead. So we're going to take the right needle tip and come into the back of the second stitch and slip both stitches off. Now you can see this front stitch here is dangling. I'm just going to bring the left needle tip forward. It's pointing that direction. I'm just going to put it right through that stitch and rescue it, and then replace the slip stitch back on the left hand needle. And you can see the structure of it is the same as when we started. The second stitch strands across the front of the first. Now I'm just going to knit these two stitches one after the other. And then when I've knitted the second stitch, I'm going to slip that back onto the left hand needle. So let's do it again. Come into the back of the second stitch, slip both stitches off, bring the left needle tip forward, it's right there, just catch that dangler, replace the slipped stitch, come into the front of that first stitch, whoops, try not to split it here, and we're just going to knit these two stitches separately in succession. When I'm finished, I replace the last worked stitch back onto the left hand needle. You can already see the braid starting to form. So let's do it again. Back of the second stitch, slip them both off, left needle tip, rescues, replace. Now here's another little tip. The lateral braid should be worked firmly, and so when you put your right hand needle in to work the first stitch, give a little tug on your live end. You can see that second stitch tighten up. That will really help the braid to look a little smaller and not so sloppy, and you won't have big stocky stitches left at the end. So we're going to replace. So when you begin, this is a hint to know where you're going here. When you're starting, the live end should be attached to the first stitch on the left hand needle, not the right hand needle. And I will show you what it looks like if you get off. So let's just go back of the second, rescue, replace. Come around into the front to knit it, give that a little tug, and knit the two. Now on this one, I'm going to purposely not replace the last worked stitch back on because this is by far the easiest mistake to make when you're doing the lateral braid. So I'm going to come into the back here, slip them both off and rescue, replace the slipped stitch, work them both, and replace. Let's do another one just so that then we'll look back at the braid so that you can identify this, because pretty much it's hard to learn this technique without doing this, making this mistake at least one time. So let's go ahead and replace and look. Okay, so you can see here's our braid, it's going beautifully, and then we've got an uh-oh right here. All that means is that you forgot to replace the last work stitch back on the left hand needle before you started. So what you would do is you would want to rip back to this stitch right here, the one that you can see kind of slanted up. And we'll just undo that. Just put these guys back up here on the needle. And then if I look on the back, sure enough, that's the one that has the live end attached to it. I'm just going to drop that back on the left-hand needle, and then I would commence from there. Come into the back of the second stitch, slip them both off, rescue the perishing, replace, come around into the front to knit it. Yeah, I'm splitting that again. Pull to tighten up the second stitch, and then you're there. Now, I want to show you an alternate way. Once you get the muscle memory of this, you understand we're doing a lot of backing and forthing here. Once you get comfortable with this, rather than slipping this stitch back onto the left-hand needle, you can just push it off the tip of the needle, let it dangle, slip the next stitch, and then rescue, oops, and replace. And the rest of it is just as normal. Let me show that to you again. Slip the stitch off, slip one purlwise, rescue, replace, and then knit. So these are two options for doing a really beautiful technique, one of my very favorites. So I hope that you give it a try. It is the foundation for a new bind-off that I'm going to be releasing really soon. So I hope you give it a try. As usual, if this is helpful, please subscribe. Thanks.